Hi, a very good afternoon. My name is Haqim. I'm excited to present my research title, which is Effect of Dynamic Stretching on Agility and Flexibility. This study explores how dynamic stretching, a commonly used warm-up technique, actually affects performance, especially in university-level athletes. Let's explore deeper. To begin, let's define dynamic stretching. It involves active movement that brings muscle and joint through a full range of motions. This movement often mimic the actions performed in a games or sport. According to researchers like Bishops or Shawashi, a dynamic stretching has been recognized for improving muscle temperature, neuromuscular functions, and readiness for activities involving speed and power. But despite this known benefit, the effects of dynamic stretching on specific physical attributes like agility and flexibility are still debated, particularly in how consistent and significant those effects are. This uncertainty inspired my study. So for the problem statement, what is the issue for this research? So there's a lack of clear, consistent evidence on how dynamic stretching impacts performance in university level athlete, either it is both professional or non-professional. Some studies suggest improvement while other reports no significant changes. Because of this inconsistency, athletes and coach might not fully understand how to structure warm-ups for the best result. This research aims to help to close that gaps. Limited research on the impact of dynamic stretching among university-level athletes, whether it is professional or non-professional, lastly, it is to fully understand and comprehend the role of dynamic stretching in agility and flexibility as an essential to optimize it is as a training methods and routines for enhancing athletes' performance. Let's move on to the purpose of the study. So with that in mind, this study had three main purposes. The first one is to provide recommendation for athletes' warm-up routines using an evidence-based research. The second one is to assess how dynamic stretching can affect agility among university-level athletes. And lastly will be to examine the impact of dynamic stretching on flexibility of the athletes. The agility and flexibility of the athletes. So for the research objective, to achieve these goals, I set out three following objectives to make it easy for a certain person to look through it. Okay, so first one is to provide practical insights for athletes, coaches, and trainers. The second one is to investigate the impact of dynamic stretching on agility and flexibility. The last one will be to assess changes in flexibilities following a single session of dynamic stretching. That is all of the research objective for my research. For my research hypothesis, I approach this with a three null hypothesis framework. The first one is assuming no significant effect of dynamic stretching on agility. Second is assuming no significant improvement in flexibility. And lastly, the third will be there is no difference between those who stretch dynamically and those who don't. So by testing these three hypotheses, help ensure that any effect observed could be attributed to the intervention. So for the slide 7, which is the significance of the study, why is this research important? So it gives us coaches and athletes concrete data to support their training decision. It also strengthens our understanding of warm-up science, which can influence performance and even help reduce any injury risk. In short, the findings can enhance both training effectiveness and sport safety. So we move forward to slide 8, which is limitations. So now, like any other research, this study has its own limits. So the limitation is it's only examine short-term effects, not long-term adaptation. So, but the second one will be participant had varying fitness level, which may influence outcomes. So for the delimitations, the focus was strictly on university level athletes. And the second one will be the only variable examined were agility and flexibility, not speed, strength, or endurance. So it might not grasp a few concepts of the sports. So for slide 9, which is literature review highlights. So previous study have had mixed results. For example, the first one is Vagela et al. found dynamic stretching improved agility performance. The second one will be Bishop and Middleton found no additional benefits from static stretching after dynamic warm-ups. So the third one will be Kurt and 13 showed that both static and dynamic stretching improved flexibility, but dynamic was more effective when combined with aerobic warm-ups. These findings provided the foundation for my own investigations. For slide 10, conceptual framework. Here is a simplified framework. So the independent variable will be dynamic stretching, the dependent variable will be agility and flexibility. So the total population will be 30 university level athletes. So this framework guided how the study was structured and analyzed. So for research methodology, which is the research design. So the type of this will be experimental study with a pre-test and post-test design. The objective will be to evaluate the intermediate effects of dynamic stretching on agility and flexibility among the university level athletes. So the intervention will be 15 minutes of dynamic stretching following the sports that involve with the athletes. So for the population sampling and sample size calculation. So the population that will be chosen is the university level athletes actively participating in sports. So the objective will be purposive sampling based on specific inclusive criteria. So the sample size will be 30 university level athletes. So the sample size calculation is I'll be using the G power for a pair t-test design. The effect size will be 0.5, which is the medium effects. The alpha will be 0.05, power will be 2, and the power will be 0.8. So the estimated sample size will be 30 participants. So the research methodology that the inclusion and exclusion will be, the inclusion will be male and female athletes each around 18 to 25 years old. The second will be actively involved in sports. So the exclusion will be those who are unable to complete the study protocol. The second one will be participating with chronic conditions that will affect the physical performance. That is the inclusion and exclusion for my research. So for the research instrument, there will be 5 things that I will be using during my research. The first one will be sit and reach table. The second will be cone marker. The third one will be stopwatch. The fourth one will be the measure tape, and lastly will be the data form to collect all of the data that I will need for my research. So for the data collection procedure, so there's a few things that will be needed to do. First one is the ethical approval. The second one will be the participants recruitment, and will be moving to the screening, and we'll be doing the pre-test. Participants perform PT-test and sit and reach test before the intervention. The intervention will be involved. Then after that will be the intervention, which is the dynamic stretching for 15 minutes. Then we'll be moving to the post-test, which is to repeat the T-test and sit and reach test after the intervention. So after that will be the data recording, result recorded to assess changes in flexibility and agility. So for the slide 16, which is the statistical analysis, I use descriptive statistic for average and variability. I'll be using the Shapiro-Wilk test to check the normality. I'll pair with the pair t-test to compare the pre and post-test intervention scores, and Cohen-D to measure the effect size or how meaningful the difference were. So the objective will be to determine whether there was a statistically significant difference in flexibility before and after using the intervention using the sit and reach test. The second one is to evaluate the changes in agility performance through the pre and post test comparison using the agility test. Second one will be assessing the normality of the data distribution using the Shapiro-Wilk test to validate assumption for parametric test. So for the result of this test is the sit and reach flexibility, which is the sit and reach test, score significantly improved after dynamic stretching. The mean increased from 37.75 cm to 40 to 44 cm. The effect size, which is the Cohen-D, minus 2.04, a very large effect. So there is statistically significant increase of flexibility after the intervention. So for the agility t-test, which the mean time dropped from 9.91 seconds to 9 to 42 seconds. The Cohen-D, which is the effect size 1.91, again a very large effect, slight violation in normality, but the t-tests are robust enough to handle it. This result clearly indicates substantial improvement in both agility and flexibility. So for the normality test, Shapiro week sit and reach t-test 0.320 normal t-assumption is met. The t-test score, which is P 0.037, violates the normal t-assumption slightly, but the t-tests are robust to mild violation, especially with sample size right now is N18. So for the result for sit and reach test, a pair sample t-test show a statistically significant improvement in sit and reach score following the intervention. So the mean flexibility increased from 37.75 to 40.44 cm. So with a mean difference of minus 2.694 cm, the effect size measured using Cohen-D was minus 2.04, indicating a very large effect. The normality test Shapiro week confirmed that the data did not violate the assumption of normality. So the agility t-test, a statistically significant improvement was also found in agility t-test score, which is 8.11. So which is below for the P 0.01. The mean time decreased from 9.91 second to 9.42 seconds, with a mean difference of 0.485 seconds. Cohen-D was calculated at 9.1, also indicating a very large effect. However, the normality assumption was slightly violated, which is 0.037, though the t-test remained robust in such cases due to the sample size. So the discussion is, the result indicate that the intervention of 50-minute dynamic stretching significantly improved performance. This result align with earlier findings but go further by showing how impactful even a single session can be. The very large effect size makes this more just statistical. The benefits are practically meaningful. So for the implication, the first one is to enhance athlete performance. The intervention significantly improved both flexibility and agility, indicating that structured warm-up routines such as dynamic stretching can directly enhance sport performance. The second will be practical implications in training programs. The strong effect size supports the implementation of dynamics warm-ups in coaching and athletic training to optimize physical readiness and reduce injury risk. The third one will be evidence for future reference, future research and development. The result provided a solid foundation for further studies and support the development of evidence-based warm-ups protocol tailored for athletes across various sports. In conclusion, dynamic stretching had a clear positive impact on both flexibility and agility in university athletes. This finding supports making dynamic warm-ups a routine part of training. They help athletes perform better and potentially reduce injury risk.